one of my most amazing experiences in life, like,
Tell me.
I mean, at work for sure, but in life as well, was when Kherson had been taken over by the Russians in the early days of the invasion.
Where is Kherson?
It's southern Ukraine.
Southern Ukraine.
Yeah, and it's sort of right on the way to Crimea, and that's why I think the Russians took it, because they have Crimea, and so they came in, and it was liberated. The Ukrainians liberated the city. I mean, on the other side of the river, in that part of Kherson, the Russians are still there to this day, but the Ukrainians took back the main city. So we were in Kyiv, and we wanted to get to Kherson, obviously, because the pictures were amazing. People were dancing in the streets and singing. So we started driving, and then we passed through checkpoints to get closer and closer. And finally, we get to the final checkpoint outside of Kherson, and they said, sorry, we're closed. The president is coming tomorrow, so we're not letting anyone else in. You can come back tomorrow morning when Zelensky arrives. We said, okay. And at this point, we had driven for hours. And I was not going to drive back to our hotel in Odessa, which was, again, hours away. So I said, all right, team, let's go to the nearest village. Let's shoot a story, see what we can find, and maybe we can find a guest house. So we go to this village, and we see this little old man, and he approaches us, and he starts crying, and he basically tells us a story of how the Russians had taken over his mother's home, and they were living there, the soldiers, and they were trashing the place. I mean, it was turning into a pigsty. And finally, he said he had had enough, and so he went to the house and said, guys, you've got to get out of here. This is so disrespectful. Please leave my mother's house. And they said, okay, old man, here's a shovel. Why don't you dig your grave? So they made him dig his grave for 2 nights. He didn't tell his wife about this. He just went. They were like, "You're coming back, or we're going to find you." So he went back, and he finished digging his grave. And he shows us this. I mean, it was like a perfectly rectangular grave. And finally, he says, "Okay, I'm done." And he fully expected, to get shot and thrown in the grave. And they were kind of drunk and laughed at him and said, "Whatever, nice, get out of here." And so he left. So he tells us this story. He shows us the grave. He shows us the trashed house. And it was a sort of an amazing story. And then I said to him, listen, we're a team of 7, because we had some drivers, everything involved. Is there a place around here we could spend the night? Like, we have our own food, we have a generator, we have a Starlink, we just need a place to crash. Is there a guest house? And he said, well, you're staying at my house. Like, of course. We have food, we have a place for you to sleep, and we even have lady wine for you. I said, lady wine? What is lady wine? He said, well, we have hard wine for the men and like a softer wine for the ladies. I said, okay, that sounds amazing. Lady. So he brings us back to his house, which is essentially a junkyard. He's got all these cars on blocks and 7 dogs and sort of, a little shack there. And he brings us in, and his wife is turning one room into a bedroom for 7 people. And she has taken everything in her kitchen and cooked it and put it on this little rickety table, and we sat around this table, all 7, 9 of us, however many we were, eating like just a plain pasta topped with a sort of spicy tomato pepper mixture and bread with salo, which is the pork fat that they eat, and garlic. I know. You have some bread, and of course lady wine, which we.
So tell me about lady wine. So it
tastes like wine. I mean, it's homemade. Everything they were serving us was basically, they had moonshine, vodka. They had homemade lady wine and a harder wine. So I guess it's just the level of fermentation. So it tasted like wine, but maybe slightly fizzy.
Amazing.
In a big jug. I think the men also ended up drinking it as we made our way through the supplies. But it's those kind of moments.
Yeah.
Where you just go, oh my God, humanity is an amazing thing sometimes, right? And for them as well, because they could unload the trauma of occupation, right? They finally had people sitting around their table going, like, tell us everything.
Yeah.
So for them, it was, our poor fixer was going a mile a minute back and forth in English and Ukrainian, but it was pretty special.
So we're taking Ukraine, which is a very strong image of the food, the culture, the whole atmosphere of war. If you shifted to Syria, would that be a very different mindset in terms of?
No, I mean, the hospitality is sort of a universal gift, and in many of the cultures, particularly in the Middle East, hospitality is taken very, very seriously. So Again, I've had amazing experiences in Gaza where families have taken us into their homes.
Tell us about Gaza.
My last time in Gaza was, I think, 2017 or 2019. We haven't been able to go in for this current conflict. And at the time, our producer there has a very big family, and they would invited us to their watermelon farm, and we would sit around eating watermelon and salty white cheese, and then all the women in the family would cook and invite us into the apartment, and it would be rice and meat and stuffed grape leaves and dips and fattoush and all the yummy things. And it's just, I mean, it's pinch yourself moments, because you're in a place and you have a vision of a place, particularly if you haven't been, if you're just watching your TV and you're watching war in Afghanistan or Syria or Gaza or whatever, you think it's 360-degree destruction. But actually, when you're in it, there's these amazing moments.
What is the nearest you've come to a kind of death experience?
In 2014, my team and I were taken by Russian separatists, blindfolded at gunpoint and taken to a place and held. It was really only probably half a day, but it felt like forever. And when you're sitting there in a blindfold, time passes very slowly.
Wow.
That was in 2014.
Were you together in a room, or were you allowed to speak to each other?
They separated the men and the women. So I think the men were more worried than we were, because they didn't know what was happening to us. But honestly, they sat us down in chairs. The men they didn't give chairs to, but they sat us down in chairs and gave us a cup of tea. And the Russian soldiers were playing a boombox, and it started playing "Eye of the Tiger."
Oh, really?
And I just went, okay. This was the song in Rocky where America beat the Russians. So I don't know if you want to play this one. But
and then what happened? How were you?
I think at the end of the day, those of us who had been taken had been able to alert our bureaus back in London that it had happened. So there was a lot of phone calls being made behind the scenes, and I think they just realized they made a mistake.
What country were you in?
This was Ukraine. This was Eastern Ukraine.
And you talked about Yemen. Did you also have an experience
we went to Yemen in 2015, like not long after the Houthis had taken over, and we didn't have a near-death experience there at all. I mean, it was perfectly fine, but we did go to the presidential palace to interview the new head Houthi, whoever he was at the time, and we wanted to do things as quickly as possible, because obviously being in the presidential palace of a government that nobody wanted there is a dangerous place to sit. The Saudis could have bombed it any time. So we wanted to leave quickly. So we did our work very fast. We packed up our equipment and we were heading out the door, and they were like, you're not leaving. We said, what do you mean? You're not leaving. There's lunch. We said, well, we don't want lunch. I know, we don't want lunch. We just want to leave. And they're like, no, it's not possible. There's lunch. You're sitting down and you're having lunch. We said, and our drivers were at this point going, guys, we can't say no. They're not going to let us go. So we said, okay, let's sit down and have lunch. And so we were sort of forced to have lunch with.
Do you remember
what
you ate?
I do. It was rice and meat, and actually a really great Yemeni dish that I didn't know existed until I was there, which is a sort of shrimp stew. I didn't know they ate a lot of shrimp in Yemen, but it's sort of tomatoes, shrimp, spicy peppers of some kind, sort of cooked down until it's kind of pasty, and you eat it with a really nice bread. Yeah. So lunch was great, but I ate it probably too fast than I should.